Alright, so you have done your IGCSEs or O-levels and now you have come to AS. Here's how you start. Okay, if you are someone that thought IGCSE or O-levels was a piece of cake, then AS is an entirely different game. Now why I'm saying that is there's a huge leap from your IG to your AS, which is the first year of A-levels. Because I took the subject chemistry, and if you take chemistry as an example, it's a huge leap from your IG to your AS, because the depth of the subject content is just vast. So if you're someone who thinks IGCSE was relatively easier, then if you're coming to AS, and because let's say you're someone who did like 7, 8 or 9 or probably 10 subjects in your IGCSE, and now you're like, hey, it's just like 3 or 4 subjects in your AS, then don't think it's easy just because it's a lower number of subjects. The thing is in the difficulty level. You see, if you take a subject from your AS level, let's say chemistry for example, then the concepts and whatever you learn AS chemistry is say like 10 times the difficulty that of your IG chemistry. So it may be like a few subjects, but then the difficulty level of each subject is like 5 to 10 times more. So if you can see here, this is my IGCSE chemistry textbook, and this is my AS and A-level chemistry textbook. If you see in the IGCSE one, you have to learn 12 topics in about 9 or 10 months. And in your A's and A-levels, you have to learn a whopping 30 topics within the same span of time. Alright, so if I'm being honest, I really took off on understanding all my subjects. If I'm being honest, I took chemistry, bio, maths and physics for my AS levels. So if I'm being honest, I kind of like understood the concepts a little bit, like 3 months or 2 months prior to the actual board exam, which is like really late. So many students use the same approach because they think AS levels are the same level of difficulty as you had in your IGs, but it is not, because that is the general concept of many of the students taking up A-levels. So I'm gonna give you a few tips on how to overcome this and not to do the same mistakes as previous students, or let's say even I did. So the first and foremost tip I'd give if you're entering your first year of A-levels is to master your IGCSE concepts, because you need your IGCSE fundamental skills in order to grasp what is on the A-level textbook. If you take maths for example, you need to know the basic trigonometry or the basic calculus skills in order to go into more advanced levels. That's how everything works. Yeah, you go from level 1 to level 10. Yeah, how do you know the basics? I'd say like before your school begins teaching you your A-levels, the first year of A-levels is AS, I suggest you just like go through your IGCSEs throughout the summer, just so that you can get a rough idea, just like a general idea of what you're about to expect in AS levels. Because when I first opened my AS, because in my summer holidays after my IGCSE exams, I rarely touched the book. So once my AS started, I struggled, because when you first open your AS textbook, the first chapter or like the very first chapter is like the same concepts as what you learned in your IGCSEs, just so that you can get on the flow with A-levels. But then when you go to chapters like 2, 3, 4 and so on, then you really understand how difficult A-levels is, because it's kind of really hard to process all those things at once. Alright, the second tip is going through the content itself. Now if you were an avid highlighter in your IGCSEs, trust me, the highlighting technique is not going to work in your A-levels. For A levels, it's an entirely different approach. What you have to do is going through your notes, creating flashcards, and just like storing it in your head. And the best way to do is active recall. So in active recall, what you do is, now let's say I learned an information today. I learned something new from the textbook. I read the textbook, I learned something new. What I do is, instead of just highlighting that, which I'll obviously forget in like the next 3 or 4 hours, what I do is I create like a story in my brain. Now when I say about a story, you need to be creative of what can you specifically understand when I say story, because understanding, the speed of understanding depends and it varies from person to person. Okay, so you may be a visual learner, or you may be an auditory learner, right? Some people learn by writing down notes, like, but I'm more of a visual learner. You can see those notes I have stuck on the wall right there. Yeah, those are my biology notes right there, which I have stuck on the wall, because each time I see those notes, it helps me understand and grasp. Okay, I see the image, I'm like, okay, so this is what happening. Okay. So that information just like straight up goes into my head, rather than I having to read the entire textbook and chunks of unnecessary information. I just get the main point out of the textbook, because reading the textbook is a really tiresome process. So I have put up a website here. It's called Save My Exams. Now from Save My Exams, you can just get the idea of what the textbook is saying without actually having to read the textbook, because the website just gives you the key points of what is coming for the exam only, which is what you basically have to know. Third tip is past papers. Lots and lots of past papers. Past papers are like the key thing to acing your exams, because it gives you an understanding or like an idea of how the papers were in the previous years. I suggest you, if you're in AS, start doing past papers from the year 2015. All right, do it from 2015 till the current year. So start from 2015. Okay, when you're first doing past papers, always start from 2015. Start from the very first year. You gradually find the difficulty level increase, because if you do a 2015 past paper, it is going to be really easy, and as you go to 2016, 17, 18, you can see the difficulty level slowly increasing. And as you get to recent years like 2021, 2022, or even this year 2023, you might feel, okay, this is getting a little harder. So that is how you progress. So the key to acing those past papers is practice. You can see here the number of past papers I did. This is all the past papers I did during my AS and A levels. You can see it's a really tall structure which I built up. That is all the past papers I did for my AS and A levels. That is a lot of past papers right there. Yeah, so this is not to intimidate you, but just give you an idea of that you need to do a lot of past papers in order to ace your A levels. You might be wondering how much the grade I got for my AS levels. Well, I got A for all of my AS level subjects. So yeah, it is worth it in the end. So make sure you keep practicing more and more, so then you can get a main idea of and like understand like what exactly you can expect in your upcoming paper. Another thing about past papers is before you solve a past paper, you can see on the front page the time allotted for that paper. I'd suggest you start a timer, keep a timer, start the timer, and start solving the paper. Remove all the distractions and start doing the paper, and do not look at the mark scheme. Yeah, this is one big mistake that students do, is they check the mark scheme and they're like, okay, this is the mark scheme, and then they copy down that exact mark scheme in the paper. This is wrong, because this is not active recall. You are actually looking at some information and just like noting it down. Okay, that is copying. You're not actually learning anything. When you learn something is when you write from your own memory. Yeah, okay, you remember something, even if you do not remember what it was, then just write whatever you know, like write whatever comes to your head. even if it's like just one word, just write it down. Maybe that one word is in the mark scheme, because usually how your marks are graded is based on the scientific words. If you're doing science subjects, is based on the scientific word, which is the word which examiners are looking for. So alright, so another tip about past papers is when you're solving past papers, you may come across some relatively difficult questions. What I suggest you do is, if you're doing it with a timer, and you really cannot get your head around that question, I suggest you to mark that question, like put a circle on it, and skip the question and go to the next one. Yeah, what this means is you're also saving up on time. You'll also complete the paper, and you'll also remove the worry of, oh shoot, I couldn't get to complete the paper. Yeah, you remove your worry. This question, what you can do is, you can go up to the teacher and ask, or like if you're in a remote place, you can send a mail to the teacher. Alright, so time will eventually fly by, and your board exams will be like in 1 week, right? Or probably in like 1 month. So in this period, what you should do, again, only past papers and your key notes. Yeah, your important notes and your past papers are now the key thing. Yeah, if you have an exam like really close, what to do if you have 1 day, like only 1 day before the exam? You just need to go through the notes. Yeah, just go through the notes. You don't read the notes now, because you only have 1 day. You don't study any chapter, you don't study anything. Yeah, you just look through the notes and like try to scan the notes. Yeah, I don't know, I mean like exact like literal scanning, but then like just go through the notes. Yeah, go through the past papers, and like teach yourself where you went wrong. You know, try to check, okay, which type of questions, like which pattern of questions I get wrong the most. You may be getting wrong in like one specific type of question, or like one specific chapter. So then you need to go through that chapter more and again and again and again. Yeah, so that's what you basically do. Once you solve the paper, and you get to the end of it, you can stop the timer, and well, you can record the time you took to complete that paper. You may go beyond the time, but it's fine. All right, you can still complete the paper. Now let's say the allotted time is like 2 hours, but then you can see the timing has already ended. You can still complete the paper and then you note down the final time you took. Maybe you took 2 hours and 10 minutes or 2 hours and 15 minutes. Yeah, you note that time down and you check with the mark scheme and mark down. You have to be very strict with your marking. Yeah, you mark down what all you got wrong, what all you got correct, and mark yourself out of whatever the mark is given. And then the next day you can try solving another paper. Again, note down the time, how much time you took, and the mark. So gradually you will notice that the time you take will decrease and the marks you get will slowly increase. Yeah, the more papers you do. So that is called progression. Okay, so coming on to A levels, let me just get this clear. All right, 90% of students find A levels easier than AS. Yes, A levels are easier than AS, because AS, you're coming directly from IG, so you do not expect that drastic change from IG. But when you're in A levels, you know that okay, it's just the same thing which I learned previously, except it's just another year. So you know how it works now. You know your results from AS, so you know how to plan out your studies now. Yeah, you're better at planning, because it's just the same thing, except now you're gonna study for like another year and a little bit more advanced maybe. But trust me, A levels are much more easier than AS levels. Another thing I have to remind you is, if you're still in your AS levels, work really hard. You know, get your grades up and just work really hard that year, because your grades are gonna get carried forwarded onto your A levels. So if you got like let's say like a C in your in any subject in your AS level, then probably the max you can go up to is a B in your A levels, which is like 1 grade higher. So just try to aim for the highest grade so that you can maintain or probably get a higher grade in your A levels. Like if you get an A in your AS levels, then it's relatively easier to get an A star in your A levels. Also, if you're still in your AS levels, okay, which is the first year of A levels, make sure you get your grades really high again, because you're applying to your universities in your AS. So you still do not have your A level results, but then so you apply using your AS grades. So the school can give you something called predicted grades. So it's better to get those AS grades really high, because then you can get your predicted grades really high too, which is used for applying to universities. So a few other tips other than academics are, well, eat healthy and get good sleep. I don't think sleep is something which we can consider at A-levels, because my classmates, they generally on average slept for 4 hours only. Okay, 4 or maybe 5 hours, and that's it. Like, I'm saying this like 2 months prior to the exam. Yeah, they only slept for like 4 to 5 hours daily max. Okay, that is not really good for your health, but just because they couldn't really cope up with the subject content in the first half of the year, so they had to struggle. Alright guys, so another great tip for acing your A levels is using your parents' help and support. In my scenario, my mom helped me with a lot of things. Basically, she reminded me of my daily meals when I come back from school, because sometimes I tend to forget them. Then she made me a schedule of all the past papers that I'm supposed to do. She made also made like a small table. So if you can see here, this is for bio, and she put this entire column, so whenever I'm done with the past paper, I tick. So like that, I just kept on ticking until I'm done. So she did that for every subject and every paper. So this is bio paper 4, this is bio paper 5, this for A levels, and it's chemistry paper 4, chemistry paper 5. So like that. I guess that's about it for the tips, and all the best for your upcoming exams. And it's all about the effort, well, basically you put into your exams, or like whatever work you do, because the more effort you put in, the same amount of result you get out. So whatever you put in, the same you get out. Yeah, so if you put more work, you're obviously gonna get hopefully a good grade. And I'll see you in my next video. Have a nice day. Bye.